They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I served mine frozen solid, calculated to perfection, and neither of them ever saw it coming. And the best part? They still don't know I was the one who orchestrated their downfall. They think it was just bad luck, a series of unfortunate events. But it was me. Every single bit of it was me. My name is Vanessa, I'm 34 years old, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Or at least, I used to live there. I'm somewhere else now, starting over, but I'll get to that. First, let me tell you about the worst day of my life, and how it led to the most satisfying 6 months of calculated destruction I've ever experienced. It was a Tuesday in March, completely ordinary. I'd been married to my husband James for 8 years. We'd been together for 12 total. High school sweethearts, the whole fairy tale. He was my first serious boyfriend, my first everything, really. We got married when I was 26, bought a house in a nice suburb, both had good careers. I was a marketing manager at a mid-sized firm, he was a corporate accountant. We had what I thought was a solid marriage. Sure, we'd hit some rough patches over the years, but who doesn't? We'd been trying for a baby for about a year with no success, which was stressful, but we were handling it. Or so I thought. My best friend was a woman named Kelsey. We'd been friends since college, so about 13 years. She was the maid of honor at my wedding. She was the person I called when I had good news or bad news. She'd been there for me through my dad's death, through my miscarriage 3 years ago, through every major life event. I loved her like a sister. I trusted her completely. That Tuesday, I left work early because I had a migraine. I get them occasionally, and when they hit, I need to be in a dark, quiet room immediately or I'll end up vomiting for hours. I texted James that I was heading home sick, but I don't think the text went through because our reception at my office is terrible. I got home around 2 in the afternoon, let myself in quietly because my head was already pounding, and headed straight for the bedroom. I was planning to take my medication, close the blackout curtains, and sleep it off. I opened the bedroom door and found my husband in bed with Kelsey. I'm not going to describe what I saw in detail because I've spent enough time trying to erase those images from my brain. But it was explicit, it was obvious, and there was no possible explanation other than exactly what it looked like. They didn't notice me at first. I stood there frozen, and I don't know if it was 5 seconds or 30 seconds, but my brain just completely short-circuited. Then Kelsey opened her eyes, saw me, and screamed. The chaos that followed is a blur. James jumping up, scrambling for his clothes, saying this isn't what it looks like I mean, come on. Kelsey crying, trying to get dressed, saying I'm so sorry over and over. Me standing there, weirdly calm, just watching them panic. I remember thinking very clearly, I need to leave right now before I do something I'll regret. So I turned around, walked out of my bedroom, out of my house, got in my car, and drove to a hotel. I checked in, went up to the room, and then I completely fell apart. I spent that night crying so hard I thought I might actually die from it. The physical pain of that level of sobbing, your chest hurts, your head pounds. You can't breathe. I went through an entire box of tissues. I threw up twice. I didn't sleep at all. My phone was blowing up. James called 63 times. 63. Kelsey called 41 times. They both sent hundreds of texts. I didn't read them. I couldn't. By the next morning, I'd moved through the crying phase and into the numb phase. I felt completely empty, like someone had scooped out my insides and left just a shell. I called in sick to work, extended my hotel reservation, and just lay in bed staring at the ceiling. That's when the questions started coming. How long had this been going on? Was this the first time? Had there been other people? How had I not noticed? What was wrong with me that my husband and my best friend would do this? I finally looked at some of the texts. James's were what you'd expect. Please let me explain, it was a mistake, I love you, please come home so we can talk. Kelsey's were similar but with more crying emojis and self-flagellation about what a terrible person she was. On day 3, I agreed to meet James at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them via text. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept either. Good. He tried to hold my hand across the table, and I pulled away like he'd tried to burn me. How long? I asked. My voice sounded strange to me, flat and emotionless. He hesitated. Vanessa. How long? 2 years, he said quietly. 2 years. Not a drunken mistake. Not a one-time thing. 2 years of my husband sleeping with my best friend behind my back. 2 years of lies and deception and me being completely clueless. I asked him how it started. He gave me some bullshit story about how they'd gotten drunk at a party I'd left early because I was sick, how one thing led to another, how they both felt terrible but then it kept happening. He said it didn't mean anything, that he loved me, that Kelsey and I were best friends so it was complicated. Complicated. He actually used that word. I asked him how often. He said he didn't know, maybe once or twice a month. That was a lie. I found out later it was way more frequent than that, but in that moment, I just nodded. I asked him if there had been others. He swore there hadn't been, that it was just Kelsey, like that was somehow better. Then I asked him the question I needed answered most, why? He didn't have a good answer. He talked about how we'd been distant, how the stress of trying for a baby had created tension, how he felt like I was more focused on getting pregnant than on our marriage. He said Kelsey got him in a way I didn't anymore. He said a lot of things that basically amounted to, I blamed you for my choices. I listened to all of it, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just this vast emptiness. Then he said, I want to fix this. I want to go to counseling. I want to save our marriage. I love you, Vanessa. This was just. I don't know what it was, but it's over now. I'll never see Kelsey again. We can get past this. I looked at this man I'd been with for 12 years, who I'd thought I'd spend my life with, who I'd trusted completely. And I realized I didn't know him at all. The person I'd loved didn't exist. He was just a character this stranger had been playing. Okay, I said. He looked shocked. Okay? You mean, we can try to work on things? Sure, I said. Let's try counseling. He actually smiled. Like he couldn't believe his luck. He reached for my hand again, and this time I let him take it, even though my skin crawled at his touch. We left the coffee shop, and he asked if I was coming home. I said not yet, that I needed a few more days to process, but we could start looking for a marriage counselor. He seemed disappointed but agreed. I went back to my hotel room, and that's when the rage finally hit. It came over me like a wave, this white-hot fury that made me shake. How dare they? How dare they do this to me? 2 years. 2 years of looking me in the eye, of Kelsey listening to me talk about my marriage, of James making love to me while sleeping with her. 2 years of me being the stupid, oblivious fool. I wanted to hurt them the way they'd hurt me. I wanted them to feel the pain and betrayal and humiliation I was feeling. But more than that, I wanted them to lose everything, the way I'd lost everything. And I realized, I could do that. I could absolutely do that. But I had to be smart about it. That night, I started planning. I grabbed a notebook from the hotel desk and started writing down everything I knew about James and Kelsey's lives, their jobs, their relationships, their finances, their secrets, their vulnerabilities. I wrote for hours, filling page after page. By morning, I had the beginning of a plan. It would take time and patience, but I could pull it off. And they'd never know it was me. First, I had to play the part. I came home, and I acted like the traumatized wife trying to forgive. James was so relieved. We started going to marriage counseling, and I played my role perfectly, hurt but willing to work on things, asking the right questions, crying at the right moments. Our therapist ate it up. She praised me for my strength and willingness to fight for my marriage. Meanwhile, I was gathering information. I went through James's computer, his phone, his email. I recovered deleted messages between him and Kelsey. Hundreds of them. Explicit photos. Messages about me making fun of me, complaining about me, talking about how clueless I was. There was one message where Kelsey said, "Sometimes I feel bad, but then I remember how boring she is and I get over it." That one almost broke my resolve. Almost made me confront them right then and there. But I didn't. I saved everything to a secure cloud account they couldn't access, and I kept playing my part. I met with Kelsey too. She begged for forgiveness, said it would never happen again, that she didn't know what she'd been thinking. I told her I needed time but that maybe eventually we could rebuild our friendship. She cried and hugged me and said I was such a good person. I smiled and hugged her back while mentally cataloging all the ways I was going to ruin her life. Here's what I learned during my research phase: James had been embezzling from his company. Not a lot, small amounts over time, maybe $50,000 total over 2 years. He was hiding it in a separate account, probably planning to use it to leave me eventually, or maybe to fund his relationship with Kelsey. I don't know, and I didn't care about his motivations. I just cared that I now had leverage. Kelsey worked in HR at a large company. She'd been having an affair with her married boss for years before James, something she'd told me about in confidence, swearing me to secrecy. The affair had ended badly, but she still had her job. Her boss was still there too, and his wife had no idea. More leverage. I also discovered that Kelsey had lied on her resume about having a master's degree. She'd attended the program but hadn't finished her thesis, so she never actually graduated. Her company had never verified it, but if they did now. For 2 months, I played the perfect forgiving wife. James thought we were healing. Our counselor thought we were making progress. Meanwhile, I was systematically setting up their destruction. Step 1. I created an anonymous email account and sent a detailed report to James's company about the embezzlement. I included documentation, account numbers, everything they'd need to investigate. I knew it would take them a few weeks to verify everything, so I timed it carefully. Step 2. I sent an anonymous message to Kelsey's boss's wife. Just a simple note saying, "Your husband had an affair with Kelsey Morrison from his office for 2 years. I thought you deserved to know." I included a few details only someone who knew the situation would know, so she'd believe it. Step 3. I contacted Kelsey's company's HR department, anonymously, from a burner phone, and suggested they might want to verify Kelsey Morrison's educational credentials, as there were rumors she'd falsified her resume. Step 4. I consulted with a divorce attorney and got all my ducks in a row. I documented everything: the affair, the evidence, the financial records. I made sure I'd get everything I was entitled to and then some. Then I waited. It took 3 weeks for everything to start falling apart, and it was more beautiful than I could have imagined. James got called into a meeting at work about financial discrepancies. He came home pale and shaken. He told me there was some kind of misunderstanding, that someone had made accusations against him, but it would all get cleared up. I played the supportive wife, told him I believed in him. 2 days later, he was fired and escorted out by security. They'd found everything. The company was pressing charges. He came home devastated, couldn't believe this was happening. I held him while he cried and asked how this could have gone so wrong. He had no idea someone had tipped them off. He thought they'd discovered it through a routine audit. A week after that, Kelsey's life started imploding. Her boss's wife confronted him, and it all came out not just about Kelsey, but about another affair he'd had since. The wife filed for divorce and made it as public and messy as possible. Kelsey's name got dragged through the company rumor mill. Then HR started investigating her credentials and discovered she'd lied on her resume. She was fired for falsification of application materials. Within 2 weeks, both James and Kelsey had lost their jobs. And they had no idea it was connected, no idea it was anything other than terrible luck and their past catching up with them. But I wasn't done. Kelsey, desperate and unemployed, tried to reach out to me. She called crying, saying everything was falling apart, that she'd lost her job and could really use a friend. The audacity of this woman, calling me for support after sleeping with my husband for 2 years. I told her I didn't think we could be friends anymore. That I'd tried, but I couldn't get past what she'd done. She cried more and said she understood. James, meanwhile, was spiraling. He couldn't find work because word had spread about the embezzlement. Companies don't want to hire accountants who steal. He was looking at potential criminal charges. Our savings were being drained by legal fees. That's when I filed for divorce. He didn't see it coming. We'd been in counseling, we'd been working on things, and then boom, divorce papers. He begged me to reconsider, said he needed me now more than ever, that we could get through this together. I told him I couldn't be married to someone I didn't trust. That the affair was one thing, but the embezzlement was another, and I couldn't be tied to his legal and financial problems. It was all very reasonable and measured. The truth was, I'd timed it perfectly. I filed after he lost his job but before the criminal charges were finalized. My lawyer was very clever about protecting my assets and making sure I wasn't liable for any of his legal debts. The divorce was brutal for him. He had to move out of our house, which I kept. He had to give me half of what was left in our joint accounts. After legal fees, it wasn't much, but it was something. He lost access to some investments my father had set up for us that were in my name. And then the criminal charges came through. Embezzlement, fraud. He took a plea deal to avoid jail time, probation, restitution, community service. But it went on his record. Last I heard, he's working at his cousin's HVAC company doing bookkeeping for a fraction of what he used to make. He's living in a studio apartment and driving the same beat-up Honda he had in college because he can't afford anything else. Kelsey had it worse, somehow. She couldn't find work in her field not just because of the resume lie, but because the scandal with her boss had made her toxic in the local professional community. She moved back in with her parents in Ohio. She's working retail last I checked, trying to rebuild her life at 33 years old. And the absolute best part? They blamed each other. I know this because I stayed friends with some mutual acquaintances who kept me updated. James told people that Kelsey had distracted him during a crucial time, that the stress of the affair had caused him to make mistakes at work. Kelsey told people that James had gotten her fired somehow, that he'd sabotaged her out of spite when she ended the affair. It didn't end. I ended it by coming home early that day, but she rewrote history. They actually had a huge blowout fight in a parking lot that someone witnessed, yelling at each other about whose fault everything was. They haven't spoken since. Neither of them knows it was me. They think their lives fell apart due to coincidence and bad luck. They have no idea I spent 2 months carefully orchestrating every piece of their destruction. Me? I took the divorce settlement, sold the house, and moved to Seattle. Fresh start. New city, new job, new life. I'm a senior marketing director now at a tech company, making more than I ever did in Charlotte. I have a beautiful apartment with a view of the water. I've started dating again, nothing serious yet, but I'm in no rush. I sleep soundly at night. No guilt, no second thoughts. People might think I went too far, that the revenge was disproportionate. But here's what those people don't understand: James and Kelsey didn't just betray me once. They betrayed me consistently, deliberately, for 2 years. They looked me in the eye and lied every single day. They made fun of me. They built a relationship on my pain. They deserved everything they got. The embezzlement and the resume fraud? Those were real. I didn't make that stuff up. I just brought it to light. They destroyed their own lives with their choices. I just accelerated the consequences. Sometimes I look them up on social media. James's profile is mostly private now, but I can see he's balding more than he used to and looks about 10 years older than he did when I last saw him. Kelsey's Instagram used to be all carefully curated photos of her fabulous life. Now it's generic inspirational quotes about starting over and resilience. It would almost be sad if I cared. But I don't. I feel nothing when I look at their profiles except maybe a small sense of satisfaction. I did tell one person the whole truth, my therapist. I started seeing her after I moved to Seattle, and after a few months, I told her everything. What I'd done, how I'd planned it, how I felt about it. She asked me if I felt guilty. I said no. She asked if I'd do it again. I said yes. She asked if I thought I'd taken it too far. I said no. If anything, I wish I could have done more. She didn't judge me, which I appreciated. She said that what I'd done was a way of reclaiming power in a situation where I'd been powerless, that my actions made psychological sense even if they weren't necessarily healthy. She said I might want to examine why I felt the need for such elaborate revenge instead of just leaving and moving on. Here's my answer to that: because just leaving wouldn't have been enough. They would have gotten away with it. They would have continued their relationship, maybe eventually gone public with it, maybe even ended up together. And I would have been the sad, pathetic ex-wife who got cheated on. This way, they both lost everything. They lost their careers, their reputations, their financial stability, and each other. They got to feel a fraction of the pain they caused me, stretched out over months instead of one terrible day. That's justice. Maybe not legal justice, maybe not moral justice by everyone's standards, but it's the justice I needed. I'm not saying everyone should do what I did. Most people probably shouldn't. It requires a level of calculation and patience that's honestly kind of exhausting. And there was risk involved. If they'd figured out it was me, there could have been consequences. But they didn't figure it out. And there weren't consequences. And I got to watch them destroy each other while thinking it was just bad luck. So yeah, I ruined my husband and my best friend's lives after discovering their 2-year affair. And I don't feel bad about it at all. They made their choices. I made mine. Mine just happened to be more effective.